Judges 13 records the birth of Samson. And of course, consistent with the whole book of Judges, the chapter opens with, "And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines 40 years. There was a certain man of Zorah, a family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah. His wife was barren and bare not. The angel of the Lord appeared unto the woman, said unto her, Behold now, thou art barren, and bearest not. But thou shalt conceive and bear a son. Now therefore beware, I pray thee, drink not wine, nor strong drink, nor any unclean thing. For lo, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come on his head. For the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb." We can simplify this. Many people make much to do about that word, but the Hebrew word Nazir really lends its roots back to a vine that is unpruned. The root of it doesn't lend its name back to Nazareth. It lends its name in the Hebrew origins, if you were to look up the word, to an unpruned vine, which makes perfect sense when people talk about the concept of the true vine. They get a little bit confused with the two terminologies. Be clear about this. Nazarite has that root, and it simply means consecrated to the Lord in this respect. If you were to look up, I just did in Brown Driver Briggs, the 3 Hebrew letters, consecrated, separated. The vow to not drink wine or not partake lends itself back to the root of an unpruned vine. So the child shall be a Nazarite unto God from the womb. He shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hand of the Philistines. The woman came and told her husband, saying, A man of God came unto me. His countenance was like the countenance of an angel of God, very terrible. I asked him not whence he was, neither did he say his name. But he said unto me, Behold, thou shalt conceive, bear a son. Now drink no wine nor strong drink, neither eat any unclean thing, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb to the day of his death. And there's some very subtle things included in God's word, but the very fact that this is told by the mouth of the angel of the Lord to the woman until the day of his death, as God is on the corner before you get there, knowing what we don't know. We know from reading the word. Manoah entreated the Lord and said, O my Lord, let the man of God which thou didst send come again unto us and teach us. I love this. Teach us what we shall do unto the child that shall be born. It's a good prayer for parents to pray. Teach us. Teach us what we should do. God hearkened to the voice of Manoah. The angel of God came again unto the woman as she sat in the field. But Manoah, her husband, was not with her. Can you imagine that? First time it was really magnificent, and she gets this encounter. The second time she's out there in the field, whatever she's doing out in the field, angel appears to her. And specifically, there's little nuances, but her husband was not with her. And the woman made haste and ran and showed her husband and said unto him, Behold, the man hath appeared unto me. The man hath appeared unto me that came unto me the other day. Manoah arose, went after his wife, came to the man, and said unto him, Art thou the man that spakest unto the woman? Yeah, that's me. Manoah said, Now let thy words come to pass. How shall we order the child? How shall we do unto him? Wonderful entreating to the angel of the Lord what to do with this child. The angel of the Lord said unto Manoah, Of all that I said unto the woman, let her beware. She may not eat anything that cometh of the vine, neither let her drink wine or strong drink, nor any unclean thing. All that I have commanded her, that are observed. And Manoah said unto the angel of the Lord, I pray thee, let us detain thee until we have made ready a kid for thee. The angel of the Lord said unto Manoah, though thou detain me, I will not eat of thy bread. And if thou wilt offer a burnt offering, thou must offer it unto the Lord. For Manoah knew not that he was an angel of the Lord. Manoah said unto the angel of the Lord, what is thy name? That when these thy sayings come to pass, we may do thee honor. The angel of the Lord said unto him, why askest thou thus after my name? King James says, seeing it is secret. They ruin that because you're all familiar with this word. We've seen it many times. It's Pe, Hebrew P, Lamed, Aleph. It's wonderful. His name is wonderful. It's Pila or Peli. He says, seeing it is wonderful. And the nuance of that word, again, through the Hebrew is something that cannot even be explained. It's wonderful, it's amazing, it's incredible, it's not describable. It's secret. Shh. You know, when I was reading this, it was funny, as I went back to Genesis, to that passage where the angel of the Lord is encountering Jacob. You know, where he asks Jacob, what's your name? And he says, tell me your name. My name's Jacob. No longer Jacob, but Israel. Then he has the audacity to ask the angel of the Lord, what's your name? And I thought, you know, that must be a really important thing for God, because back there in Genesis, he didn't tell him his name. It just says, and he blessed him. Here, he says, why do you ask my name? Seeing it's wonderful, but literally it's wonderful, but it's impossible for you to understand. It's like saying, how do you describe God? Manoah took a kid. I just thought I'd tell you that. It's funny that all these people that have these encounters are asking the same questions pretty much. Manoah took a kid with a meat offering and offered it upon a rock unto the Lord, and the angel did wondrously. Manoah and his wife looked on. It came to pass when the flame went up toward heaven from off the altar, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame of the altar. That must have been quite a spectacle. Manoah and his wife looked on it and fell on their faces to the ground. Now, this is not part of what I want to lift out of here, but I just say one thing. This is what I was saying to you about practicing an awareness of God's presence, which so much of today's worship lacks. It's all about the essence of, does this make me feel good, and do I feel spiritual about it, rather than, if you really believe you're in the King's presence and He's with you all the time, the worship is geared towards Him, towards worshiping Him, honoring Him, exalting Him. This is a fine example if they really had a reality check of the encounter they just had. Fell on their faces to the ground. If this would have happened at some other church down the street, they would have been whooping and hollering and running all over the place and praising the Lord and amening, but they would have probably, if next thing, they would have gone down the street and said, and the Lord spoke to us, and the Lord said. Just thought I'd tell you that. That was gratuitous. But the angel of the Lord did no more appear to Manoah and to his wife. Then Manoah knew that he was an angel of the Lord. Manoah said unto his wife, we shall surely die, because we have seen God. But his wife said unto him, if the Lord were pleased to kill us, he would not have received a burnt offering and a meat offering at our hands. Hello! I love the wisdom of this woman. There are a few wise women in the Bible. Hello, husband, Manoah. That's pretty good. Neither would he have showed us all these things, nor would as at this time have told us such things as these. I like this, the sections of chapter and verse, but specifically between the verses. And the woman bare a son. You know, it conveniently left out how that all happened, but and the woman bare a son. As if it The angel of the Lord appeared. Then they offered the burnt offering, and then the woman bare a son, just all within one verse. It's amazing what happens between verses, yeah, in the Bible. We might write a book one day between the verses. I will leave that one alone for now. And the woman bare a son, called his name Samson, and the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move him at times in the camp of Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. Samson went down to Timnath and saw a woman in Timnath of the daughters of the Philistines. It's kind of an interesting description here. He sees the woman. His folks say, couldn't you pick of your kindred and of your people? No, I want this woman. Get her for me. She pleases me. It's right there. Get her for me. No please. No may I. That's the one I want, the one that I shouldn't have, that is not from my kindred, not from amongst those that I should choose. Get her for me. She pleases me well. But his father and his mother knew not that it was of the Lord, that he sought an occasion against the Philistines, for at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. Then went Samson down, and his father and mother, to Timnath, and came to the vineyards of Timnath, and behold, a young lion roared against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him. And I would ask you just to kind of put that as a mental peg in your mind, that the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him. And he rent him, that is the lion, he rent him like he would have rent a kid, as if he had had nothing in his hand. Quite amazing, the power that he had, the strength that he had. I want you to remember that, because later on, after it says this, Samson did not know that the Lord had departed from him. And he got up and said he would go up like these previous times under Delilah's instigation to get him to divulge the secret of his strength. It says he did not know that the Lord had departed from him, and he got up and said to himself, I'll do like all these other times. Now this, again, is one of these that we're so familiar with. We can make it into a Sunday school story and fail to take the lessons out of this, which I feel are so very profound and so applicable to today. Of course, he saw the woman. She pleased Samson well, and the rest is history. He takes her as his wife. You know, during that wedding celebration, he declares a riddle and says, if you can solve the riddle, to the men that are there, if you can solve the riddle within 7 days of the feast, verse 12, find it out, then I'll give you 30 sheets and 30 change of garments. Now, that's not such a big deal. But I guess in that time it was. I mean, it would have been something spectacular had he said, I'll kill 30 lions for you, or 30 pieces of gold or silver. But 30 sheets, 30 change of garments. If you cannot declare it to me, then you'll give me these things. Okay, put forth your riddle that we may hear it. And he said to them, out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. They could not in 3 days expound the riddle. It came to pass on the 7th day, they said unto Samson's wife, entice your husband, that he might declare unto us the riddle, lest we burn thee and thy father's house with fire. Now, you know, if you know the story, you know that she enticed him to tell what it was, and she and her father still got burnt with fire. Samson's wife wept before him. And don't think that I'm super sympathetic to women or men at this point. I have become extremely fatigued with dealing with many of the men around me, but the women are just as bad. So don't think that I'm going to be less on one side or the other, because this is a typical woman's trick. Now, you know, when all else fails, just crank out the tears, ladies. You know what to do. pull out the Kleenex box and start sobbing if all else fails. Just what she's doing. She says, you hate me. You can't love me. You put forth this riddle unto the children of my people, but you didn't tell me. He said unto her, behold, I have not told it to my father, nor my mother, so why should I tell you? And she wept before him 7 days. Let me tell you something. That would be enough for anybody. Anything to stop this woman from crying. 7 days while their feast lasted. It was supposed to be a celebration. It came to pass on the seventh day that he told her, because she lay sore upon him, she told the riddle to the children of her people. And the men of the city said unto him on the seventh day before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey, what is stronger than a lion? And he said unto them, if ye had not plowed with my heifer. I'm telling you, that is a lesson for you men. Don't call your woman a heifer, all right? I don't care what you want to do to appease that one. That ain't going to work. You wouldn't have found out my riddle. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon. He slew 30 men of them, took their spoil, took the garments, basically, and gave it to those that expounded the riddle. No, I wanted new ones. I didn't want to use garment. What a gift. You have some stinky garment. Here, it's yours. What's good is he never said, he just said 30 sheets and 30 change of garments, but he didn't say that they were going to be clean. And his anger was kindled, and he went up to his father's house. But Samson's wife was given to his companion, whom he had used as his friend. Good, nice to have friends like that. It came to pass that within a while after, in the time of wheat harvest, that Samson visited his wife with a kid. He said, I will go in to my wife into the chamber. But her father would not suffer him to go in. And her father said, I verily thought that thou hadst utterly hated her. Therefore I gave her to your friend. Is not her younger sister fairer than she? Take her. Now this sounds like another trap of the Bible. Like, it's Leah, take her. Samson said concerning them, now shall I be more blameless than the Philistines, though I do them a displeasure. And you know the story. Took 300 foxes, tied them tail to tail, set them on fire, and let them basically burn everything down. The corn stalks, the vineyards, everything. The Philistines said, who's done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he hath taken his wife and given her to his companion. Philistines came up and burnt her and her father with fire. So see, originally they said, if you don't give us the answer to the riddle, we'll burn you. She gave them the answer. They still ended up burning her. It's a win-win situation. Okay, now Samson's mad. He's going to say, now that you've done this, I'm going to get revenge. Now, if you fast forward, and there's just some great, interesting sidebars in here, but you know that he goes in chapter 16, it says that he goes in to a harlot. So his wife is dead, who really then was no longer really his wife because her father wouldn't let him go in to her. He goes into a harlot. Samson went to Gaza, saw there a harlot, went into her. And it was told, saying, Samson's here. And they, of course, surrounded and laid in wait all night in the gate of the city. They were quiet all the night. I bet they were. In the morning, they were saying, we'll kill him. Now, I like this because it says here, Samson lay till midnight. Didn't stay there all night. And there's a good reason. He went into a prostitute. I don't think he went in there to get sleep. Right? He's the only guy. I mean, Rahab's in there in the Heroes of Faith, but he's the only guy in that chapter, name by name, that has the claim to fame that he went into a harlot, which is listed in that chapter. And specifically here it tells you he did not go in to get rest, because it says he lay there till midnight, and then at midnight he got up. Must have been a real amazing night, because it says he took the doors of the gate of the city and the 2 posts, and phew. All I got to say is she must have been some kind of woman. It came to pass afterward, and we don't know. Why I mentioned about chapter and the verse divisions is who knows how much time passed between this event of the harlot and this next event. Came to pass afterward, he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. Now, you know, when you get a bird's eye perspective of Samson's life, you see Samson had a little problem with women. Just a little problem. But if you focus on that and you make that the highlight of his story, you'll miss the fact that you and I can see ourselves in his realm. Because each one of us wrestling with the things that each person, it's unique for each person, what they wrestle with, what they encounter as the desires and lusts, which are not necessarily in the sexual realm such as these that we're looking at with Samson. But that a person keeps going back, and there's no doubt in my mind that in Samson's view, from his vantage point, he had to conclude at some point that he had a problem. Now you can just say, oh, he didn't have very good luck with women. But, you know, there's this element here of where we're told about his wife, and his wife doesn't seem to be too compassionate with his riddle, as she weeps and pleads and finally gets it from him and tells the people so that they can say, we now know it, we've solved it. Here's this harlot. We don't really know much about her. Now we have this woman, Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up unto her and said unto her, entice him, and see wherein his great strength lieth, and by what means we may prevail against him, that we may bind him to afflict him. Now, we'll give you this here 1,100 pieces of silver, each one of us, to do this. Delilah said to Samson, tell me. See, there's no space between these events, so it's like they said this, and then the next verse, Delilah says to Samson, tell me, I pray thee, wherein lies your great strength? Samson said unto her, if they bind me with 7 green, and I like this, the King James has wise, just new cords, just cords that have never been dried, then shall I be weak as any other man. Just that's the ticket right there. And the lords of the Philistines brought her up these 7 brand new cords which had not been dried. She bound him, and the men are laying in wait. They're in the next chamber, right next door. That's kind of freaky too. Philistines, she cries, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. And he brake the cords as a thread, just like that. So his strength was not known. Delilah said unto Samson, behold, thou hast mocked me, told me lies. Now tell me, I pray thee, wherewith thou mightest be bound. He said unto her, if they bind me fast with new ropes that were never used, these are brand new, as opposed to the young and green tender ones, then I shall be weak like any other man. Delilah therefore took new ropes, bound him. This is a lot of binding here. And the Philistines, now she's crying, the Philistines be upon thee, Samson. Of course, they're waiting in the next room, but it doesn't work. Delilah says unto Samson, hitherto thou hast mocked me, told me lies. I often read this and ask myself, why did he tell her? After number 3, why did he tell her where his strength lied? Obviously, it's quite, if you think about it, it's quite arrogant that he divulges this to her, that somehow she wouldn't have tried to do the same thing she tried the times before. You've mocked me, you've told me lies. Tell me wherewith thou mightest be bound. He said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks of my head with the web, she fastened it with the pin, and here she comes again. The Philistines be upon thee, Samson. He awakened out of his sleep, And he just ripped the whole thing up. You can imagine, I mean, his braids are tied into that pin, and when he gets up, he probably took everything with him. He had that whole weaving mechanism on his head. She said, how can you say, I love thee, when that heart is not with me? How can you say that you love me? Didn't somebody else say that to him too? It's just a pattern here. Thou hast mocked me these 3 times, hast not told me wherein lieth, where's your strength? It came to pass when she pressed him daily, and I bet she did, with her words, and urged him, that his soul was vexed unto death. Do you see the pattern? Because it was the same thing with the wife. In her case, it was 7 days. He just wept, and finally he just gave in to the wife. It's the same thing. It says his soul was vexed unto death. Now, you men better not be using that against your wife and saying, see, this, you're doing to me what Delilah did. You're vexing me unto death. And he told her all his heart, and said unto her, there hath not come a razor upon mine head, for I have been a Nazarite unto God from my mother's womb. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I shall become weak, and be like any other man. This is what's so disturbing. There was a certain arrogance that he would tell her this, because he's basically saying, the secret of my strength is that I've been consecrated unto God from the womb. Not thinking that if you were in his shoes or wherever he was, that she wouldn't attempt to try to get at the root or the secret of his strength. If I be shaven, then my strength will go from me. When Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called for the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up this once, for he hath showed me all his heart. She has struck gold. Of course, they came up unto her, brought money. They brought it with them. They're ready to do the transaction here. She made him sleep upon her knees. She called for a man. She caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his head. And she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. She said, the Philistines be upon thee, like the last 3 times. And he woke out of his sleep, and he said, and this is what I want you to highlight in this. Remember, I said at the very beginning how the Spirit of the Lord was mightily upon him. And now he said to himself, now he's saying, I will go out as at other times before and shake myself, because he wist not that the Lord departed from him. And why I said this whole lesson on Samson is extremely important, because when we read in the New Testament, if we sin willfully, there had to be a moment for him where he had the recognition this was his point of weakness. There's no doubt in my mind. And yet, in his arrogance, even after the event of his locks being shaved and now he's shorn, he said, I'll go out as all the other times. It'll be fine, because he did not know that the Lord departed from him. And you know, every time I've read this, I never really stopped on this one point. We are drawn and we come and we are given the gift of that new life in us. That is not by any means the idea, and let nobody deceive you, that suddenly because you understand the gift that God has given you, that somehow you will lead a sinless life. Not possible. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, this is a lesson to people who have the propensity or the possibility, and that is all of us, to slide backwards in weakness. Just as the lesson through Jonah shows Jonah fleeing, going the other way, going downward. He's going down to Tarshish. He's going down into the boat. Now we have here the very same lesson is being given in a different dimension. This was a weak point for him. And rather than asking the Lord for deliverance, that's why we're told to pray, lest we enter into temptation, to pray and ask God for help. Because this was definitely a weakness. And I remember reading one of the scriptures. People talk about grieving the Holy Spirit. We don't know what exactly it is. Some people say, well, what is the unpardonable sin? But you have a picture right here of God, and in God's Word, someone not even being aware that the Lord departed from him. Now we have this point of reference to be able to look at and see we have a way of escape. Unlike perhaps Samson maybe didn't have the same way of escape we have, but there's no temptation, not a one, such as common to man. Don't think that your temptation is unique to you. I have a couple of prayer requests of people saying, help, I need help with this bondage I'm in, and they tell me what their issues are. There is no temptation. In Samson's case, his weakness happens to be women. You fill in the blanks for you. You know what it is for you, and I don't want to know what it is for you. Really, I don't. Unless you're calling in a prayer request, I don't want to know. That's between you and God, but that's why we're told to pray. And specifically, that's why the New Testament talks about not sinning willfully. If we sin willfully, there remaineth no more remission, because there are certain things, and for each person it's different. I remember Dr. Scott saying a sense of oughtness, a universal sense of oughtness, of what's right and what's wrong. And for each person it may vary. That's why when people try and enforce their moral and ethical codes on me, I just kind of like talk to the hand. Each person's going to be different, but the lesson here, and it's kind of a frightening one, because he didn't even know that the Lord departed from him. And the tragic ending of this is, and it's another one of these pictures of grace. He didn't know the Lord departed from him. He believed that he could get up like all the other times. Now they bind him, gouge out his eyes, and he's grinding in the prison now. And they take him out like he's a spectacle. I mean, I've many times envisioned this moment where he's in that, what I would describe as maybe a semicircular area with the two pillars and the great crowd, thousands of people looking on, blind. And his prayer, by the way, his last prayer is somewhat frightening, because he doesn't say this is his prayer as he's standing there before he pulls the pillars down. It says, Samson called unto the Lord and said, O Lord God, remember me, I pray thee, and strengthen thee, I pray thee, only this once, that I may be at once avenged of the Philistines for my 2 eyes. And again, it's something that every time I read that, it stays with me. He didn't say that I may avenge the wrong done to your people, or that I may avenge whatever wrongs. It still was something, by the way, centered in him. He was still going to ask God about something to avenge for his own person, not the cause of what had been harmed. And amazingly enough, it's a picture of grace, because God gave him that last magnificent burst of strength, where it says he put his hands, one on the one side and one on the other, upon those pillars and pulled down the house. His last words, let me die with the Philistines. And to me, it's a subtle picture of God's grace that he honored that last petition of his. But it's a word of caution for us on the subject of the heels of yesterday's message of the potential to backslide. I'm telling you, in the modern frame, that's the way Satan uses a lot of our weaknesses. He doesn't know what our weaknesses beforehand. We open the door just a little bit, and it's just enough for him to get his foot in the door and pry it open a little bit more. And I've been dealing with some subjects last week or two, which have made me really come to realize, I think I didn't maybe understand this until this last week or two, that the possibility is there for each and every one of us. There's no one that's immune to switching the gears into thinking neutral is okay. I ended up telling somebody the other day, I have never seen a car, when you put it in neutral, roll upward. It always goes down. It's always going to go, gravity will always pull it down. That is the way and the descent of the backslider. You will never be in some gear. By the way, Christianity, there is no neutral gear. But if you think that, I've never seen the law of gravity. Gravity prohibits a car put in neutral to go anywhere but specifically on a hill with the slightest bit of incline to go backwards. And that's the picture. Now, frankly, I'm liking looking at some of these people in the Bible that we've become familiar with and we kind of treat, as I said, kind of casually, because it's a fresh reminder. Substitute his weakness for whatever it is that you in your fight, in your battles, may keep going back to the same tendency. And it is only the proud and arrogant person that says, I won't do that again. Do you know the more that you say, I will never do that again, you can guarantee Satan will make a way for you to do it again? I don't even want to ask the people sitting in front of me how many of you have said, I'll never do that again. And then you feel a greater sense of shame when you do it again because you swore you'd never do it, and that's exactly the tool that the devil uses. You know what I'm saying is true. So I'm telling you on this is a subtle lesson. We shouldn't ever get to the place where we're like Samson. We think, well, I'll just brush myself off and get up. And he had no awareness that the Spirit of the Lord was gone. Why do you think David, that's why that Psalm 51 is so special and dear to me. When he's crying out, he says, don't take your spirit from me. Now, the sensitive soul, in the recognition of our condition, if you're still crying out to God and saying, help me and don't take your spirit from me, if you're still desiring to ask him for forgiveness and you're still calling his name and saying, Lord, help me, there's hope for you. It's when you get to the point where you stop calling on God and the ability to even recognize. It's rationalizing. The minute that rationalizing mind starts to work, it's what Reinhold Niebuhr said, what Dr. Scott highlighted for many years. We'll be content to try and convince ourselves that sin isn't sin after all, because we have that bent in our nature. We're prone to that, to deceive ourselves. This should be a good lesson for us. Our great strength lies in Christ. When we're weak, we're made strong because of him. Our great strength for us lies in the faith that we have looked to him, in the perfect knowledge of what he has promised to do. So I guess it's another subtle message on those folks who think maybe their dedication to the Lord. Here's a man who from birth was consecrated and dedicated to the Lord. And yet if you follow his pathway, his behavior, and forgive me for saying it like this, but his behavior, he knew he was consecrated. He knew that he was dedicated. He knew he was set apart. But he still managed to kind of treat it cheaply, casually, as if it wasn't that big of a deal. There are so many lessons in here, but the lesson I want to highlight tonight is a good lesson. This weakness of his cost him. And it didn't just cost him the final pages and the final outcome. The Lord departed from him, and he didn't even know it. I don't know where it is, what sin, or where it is that people cross the line with God. All I know is if you're still asking him for forgiveness and crying out to him, thank God, because that means there's still something inside of you that hasn't been removed. And the admonition to those, when you get pushed over the edge, and I don't know what it is, may be different for each person. When you've crossed that line, you won't have any desire for anything of God. You'll go the other way, and you'll rationalize and convince yourself and be perfectly happy about it. The caution from Samson's lesson tonight is what I said yesterday, and I'll say it again. The possibility is for every child of God. There's no one that's immune. That's why we are to press forward and aim our eyes, focusing our eyes on the prize. If your eyes are focused in the right place, you're looking to what's ahead, and that's the Lord Jesus. Keep your eyes on him. Now get on the telephone.
Come into this house, magnify the Lord, lift up holy hands, our hearts in one accord, worship and bow down before him, exalt his name today. Come into this house,